Today we are going to learn about surface blur and fixing a person's face. And so what we have at the moment is we have a file that we worked on. It's from a modeling shoot that we did a number of years ago. And we have done the retouching already. Using the stamp tool and the healing brush. We've changed the hair and the face as best we can, but you will notice if we zoom on in that we need to clean this up. I should note that you zoom in on anyone's face and it will not look that great, but we want to just clean this up just a touch. Okay, so what are we going to do first? Well, we are going to add a surface blur. Okay, and so we're going to make a copy of this retouching layer and by going Command J or Control J on Windows, and we are going to change this and call it surface blur. All right, then we are going to select filter, blur, surface blur, right there. Okay, wow, what a big change, right? And I want you to set your radius to 20 and your threshold to 25. But you know what? You can play with those if you wish. Okay? And I'm going to click on the area that I most want work done. And so that way we see it here in the preview. And you can pull this up and back and just get exactly what it is where you want it. After you've done this a number of times, you're going to kind of figure out where it is that you like, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, please note, see how I've got 20 and 25 as my radius and my threshold? I'm going to say OK, but then I'm going to go over to the name of the layer, and I'm going to say 20-25. And the reason why is because you do need to know what your settings were, because how else are you going to learn what it looked like, right? And you might be able to make different versions in the same file and then compare them. Okay, so now we have we've done this surface blur. Now you may notice that surface blur is different than the Gaussian blur that we used before. So I'm going to actually quickly throw a Gaussian blur on here so you can compare them. I'm going to do it very fast. Okay, so I very quickly, you don't have to do this, I just want to show the difference. So I've created a Gaussian blur. Now, here is the surface blur, here's the Gaussian blur. And you can see that the surface blur holds the tones in from the original, where the Gaussian blur just blurs everything. Okay, getting rid of the Gaussian blur, bringing back the surface blur. All right, now you may notice that it also, if you zoom on in here, we've lost a lot of the natural skin surface kind of thing, the texture. So we're going to add that in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make a new layer in here. I'm going to go, well, Command-Shift-N for Mac, but layer, new layer, right there. And we're going to say texture for skin. And we're going to click use previous layer to create clipping mask. Going to change this to an overlay and fill it with 50% gray. I'm going to quickly zoom on in. These are your settings right here. All right, zooming back. And we're going to do that. So this now is a clipping layer. And we covered it in gray. It had to be filled with something because we need to put a texture onto something. You can't just put a texture onto a blank layer. So we've selected that gray. It fills it in automatically with the gray. Cool. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to click on the surface blur layer, and we are going to hit M for the Marquee Tool. That gives us this square Marquee Tool right here, and we're going to draw a rectangle on her head. Right there like that. You'll see why in a second. Now I want you to hit the letter D, and D is going to give you the default color on here. There you go, there's your defaults, and you're going to hit the letter X until the white is on top. Okay? All right. And now, because this is selected, when we pick the mask tool right down here on the bottom right hand corner, we pick this add layer mask, boom. Now everything else is a black mask except this part here, which is white. Okay, so we're going to add texture to this, and you're going to basically try to get this rectangle to be the same texture as her skin, or the kind of skin that you want. All right, so really important, I always make this mistake. Click next on the layer of texture for skin. I always forget that for some reason. Okay, next we're going to go to filter and filter gallery. Up top, filter, and pick the filter gallery. And I want you to pick the texturizer and make sure that your scaling is all the way down to 50 and your relief is at 4. Okay? Now you can play with this if you'd like. Take a look at it and see, okay, this is the kind of thing that it does for the texture. Okay? And for the relief, you can see that. That doesn't look very much like skin at all. Okay? So we're going to pull this all the way down to 50, and I'm going to change this back to 4. This is what I like. You might decide that you want something different, especially when you see the next step, which is zooming in and making it look more like skin. Hit OK. All right. Yeah, that doesn't really look like skin, does it? All right. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to expand it a bit. So we're still in the texture for skin layer. I want you to go Command T or Control T. So you should, across the top, have these things up here. I want you to hover over top of the letter H so that your mouse turns to these 2 arrows. And you're going to click and drag back and forth. See this? See how it's changing? What it's actually doing is it's changing the size of the rectangle. Okay? So you can see I've got the rectangle actually quite small right now, and now I'm expanding it out. And I want you to get it to the point where you think it looks like her skin. Okay, it looks like skin, like the texture that you would want for skin. And I'm getting there. Oh boy, I'm at 329 right now. I'm starting to get around there. Okay, but you know, go to whatever it is that you want, that you like. I think I'm 411, and I'm gonna let go right there. Okay, that's what we want. So get the texture to be the way that you like. So now I just want to show really quickly that if I go Command 0 and zoom out, look at that. See how huge we made that? Made it really big. Okay. I'm gonna click on the check mark, and I'm gonna go Command 0 to zoom on in, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Good. Okay, so Next thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to fill this in with a mask. So now that we've got the texture that we want, we're going to fill in that rectangle. Click on the mask right here. Okay. We want to fill it with black. And since our background is black, on a Mac, you can go Command Delete. On Windows, you can probably go Control Delete. If neither of these things work, just go Edit, Fill, and fill it with the background color at 100%. Okay, great. We've just filled up that rectangle. And so now we can't see anything on the mask. It's now time to paint on to the mask. Hit the letter B for your brush. You can pick whatever brush size you want. And we want to paint white onto this mask. So we have our foreground is already white. And our opacity of our brush is 100%. And we're going, and the flow is also at 100. We want probably a hardness of 0 for the moment. And we're going to paint on here. See? Look at that. Okay. And gonna paint all around. Don't worry about it not looking that great, because you just need to, we're going to adjust the opacity of that layer in a bit. But pretty much what you want to do is you want to paint wherever it is that you're going to want to have the skin retouched. In this case, it's the entire forehead, really. And I'm going to make my brush smaller. And you're going to paint all around in here where you want it. Now feel free to adjust the opacity of the brush where you want just small little amounts. That's okay. And I kind of like her skin in there, so I'm not going to do much. I'm just going to add in little bits here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to watch me do the entire thing. Okay, there it is. Now I have done her face here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly make sure I haven't missed anything. I hold down the Option key and Alt for Windows. Hold down the Option key and clicked on the mask. I can see the areas. Oh boy. Maybe, well, I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I can see there's parts that I missed right here. I'm just gonna wait and see. I can always go back and paint in some more. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, and so now what we're gonna do is we're going to adjust the layer opacity to make this look a little bit more realistic. Okay, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. That was Command minus sign, and I'm going to click on this little arrow and pull this down. Oh yeah, that is looking way better. There it is. And I'm just going to try to find the sweet spot on this picture where her skin looks a lot more smooth, and I like that. That's pretty good. But you know what? I'm seeing that if I take that out and bring that back in, I'm seeing that the texture is too much. So I'm going to click on the texture for skin, and I'm going to actually reduce the amount of texture that we have. There we go. Okay, play with those two. See what it is that you want to do. Okay, one last little thing, and that is if you feel that the surface blur has taken out your edges too much, it's taken out your edges, then what you can do actually is you can use the blur tool. And if I go over here, right there, this is the smudge tool, I should say. And what you can do is you can push the smudge tool in a little bit. Now, the best thing to do is actually to control click or right click and disable this layer mask. So then you can actually see, if I grab it, see how I've grabbed this guy, and whoops, I'm in the wrong layer. There it is. How often does that happen with Photoshop? There you go. See how I'm pushing this in here like that? I'm going to go Command Z to undo that. But if I just take it just a touch, and I just pull these in, and especially actually over here on this side, you will notice that you start to get a little bit of sharpness back. When you bring back, I'm going to right click on this and enable this. See along in here? See how that's making it just a little bit sharper. Don't push it too much, right? But if that's bothering you, then go ahead and do it. I have to admit, I don't do it terribly often, but sometimes, every once in a while, I don't like a certain line or something doesn't work very well. Okay, wow, that is great. I want to show you the difference. If you hold down, if you're clicked in the surface blur layer, and hold down the shift key and click on texture for skin, then right click or control click on these two, and I want you to say group from layers. There they are. Okay, and just say okay, call this group 1, and I want you just to be able then to go before and after, before and after. And that's also, not only is it going to make you feel good about yourself, but it's also going to show you too where you might want to make some adjustments. I can see in here that maybe I might want to clean up the forehead just a little bit, maybe even throw a bit of a paint layer in there if I need to, and then back and forth, however it is that you'd like. But I think I'm going to leave it at the moment and let you get the layers to be the way that you want. But before we go, I just want to show you actually the difference between the two methods that we've shown, because you may have noticed that there was a paint blur method that was in the video that was before this, and the other method. This is the surface blur method. I've loaded the other one in here, and this right here is the paint blur method. So paint blur, surface blur, paint blur, surface blur. So you can really see how the surface blur keeps the tones of the face, where the paint blur here, it doesn't really. It does clean up some areas, and you'll notice, remember how I was just saying how this forehead part in here might even add in a little bit of the paint layer in here and play around with it. Okay, have some fun.